All right, good morning, everybody. I'd like to call this regular meeting of Desert Water Agency to order January 20th, 2026. And as a matter of housekeeping, if everyone's audio for those participating virtually will be muted in order to reduce feedback during this meeting, and remind everyone in the boardroom to please turn off or mute any electronic devices. And then remind everyone to unmute their microphone when speaking and also speak directly into the microphone. For discussion and questions, I will call in directors in the following roll call order: Director Bowman, Director Gracia, Secretary Treasurer Ortega, Vice President McKenna, and then myself. And all votes will be conducted via roll call. Now I would like to call in Director Gracia to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now I will ask Secretary Baca to please do the roll call.
Director Bowman,
Here.
Director Gracia,
Present.
Secretary Treasurer Ortega,
Present.
Vice President McKenna,
Present.
and President Bloomer.
Present.
All present.
Now it is time for public comment for items not listed on the agenda. So if members of the public may comment on any item not listed on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the agency, speakers are requested to keep their comments to no more than 3 minutes as provided in the Brown Act. The board is prohibited from acting on items not listed on the agenda. And have we received any comments via email?
No comments have been received.
Okay, and at this time, I don't see anyone in the boardroom that would like to make any comments. And is there anyone on virtually that would like to make any comments? Not seeing any, now we'll move on to public comment for items listed on the agenda. And at this time, have we received any comments via email for items listed on the agenda?
None have been received.
And I don't see anyone in the boardroom or virtually that would like to make any comments. So we will move on to the consent calendar items. At this time, the consent calendar items are considered to be routine and will be accepted upon one motion of the board without discussion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a board member requests a specific item to be discussed or removed from the consent calendar for separate action. At this time, I'd like to ask if any board members want to pull any items for discussion. Seeing none, I'll look for a motion.
Move the consent calendar as presented.
I'll second.
First by Director Gracia and a second by Secretary Treasurer Ortega, and now we'll do a roll call vote.
Director Bowman,
Aye.
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer Ortega,
Aye.
Vice President McKenna,
Aye.
and President Ortega. I'm sorry, President Bloomer. Sorry.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, action item. The first action item, authorize general manager to approve sites project assignment of project shares. General manager signs.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. At its December 19th, 2025 board meeting, the Sites Project Authority and Reservoir Committee approved the assignment of 6,234 acre-feet of site storage from Wheeler Ridge Maricopa Water Storage District and the Santa Clara Valley Water District. Now, according to our project agreement, existing participants do have the ability to essentially trade participation or assign their participation from one entity to another entity that is a current participant in the sites project. And that's what is happening here. However, in order to do so, it does take kind of a lengthy process to make that assignment or reassignment of capacity shares according to the current project agreement. And that first, the action is taken by the Reservoir Committee and Authority Board for Sites Reservoir, and they first approve it. So as a collective, the designated participants on those boards have approved to make this reassignment. And then after that happens, it takes a written approval by each current participant to allow that transfer to happen. And so what that requires is that Desert Water Agency provide written approval of this assignment of project shares in order to finalize it, along with the rest of the participants. Now, this is the first occurrence of anybody using this ability under the project agreement to assign shares. And there may be more requests in the future. And it is important to note that this reassignment of project shares will have no impact on the benefits, obligations, and storage allocation of any other reservoir committee member. So that is anybody else that has capacity interest within the reservoir. Now, we are approaching the investor commitment period where we will be asking all of the participants to really execute their final and provide their final authorization and approval to enter into the site's reservoir project into the construction phase, and therefore solidifying the capacity share and investment in the project. Up until this point, we have only been investing in the development of, which provides us the opportunity and essentially first right of refusal of that capacity investment within the reservoir. Now that is coming up, it's anticipated within the second quarter of 2026, and so things will start to move a little bit quicker as we reach this key decision point. And staff was requesting the board of directors authorize the general manager to provide a written approval for site's project assignment of project shares that only change the project agreement members' respective participation quantities in Exhibit A of the reservoir project agreement. And as I said, prior to us, each individual entity participant signing, given this written approval, it is approved by the Reservoir Committee and Authority Board. And so this has been reviewed by legal counsel, and the recommendation is to authorize the general manager to approve all sites project assignment of project shares where the impact is limited to the redistribution of project agreement members' respective participation quantities in Exhibit A of the site's reservoir project agreement. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay, at this time, Director Bowman, do you have any questions?
The authorization is to approve all sites project assignment projects. So is this going to cover as an umbrella for you if any more of these come up?
That is correct. This is to just provide the authority for me to sign those as they come up. And it is limited to kind of this redistribution of the project shares within the current project participants. So it's of limited scope. And really it's for kind of, it's more ministerial and administrative in nature.
Thank you.
Director Grasha, any questions?
I for one, would like to be notified as these changes occur. So I'm not sure that a blanket authority is something that would be good, at least from my perspective. I'd like to know how strong the legs are of each of these participants. And it didn't sound like you said that that both boards approved this, the receiver and the presenter of this opportunity. I didn't hear that in your report. And I just wondered if the home boards approved this exchange or if it just came from their designee on them. Do you know?
To my knowledge is the home boards would have approved the participation or the reassignment of those shares. And so they have done, in my perspective, they have done what they need to do to reassign the shares on their end, and they have entered into agreements to do this. What the level of those agreements are, I have not investigated. What I do know is that an agreement has been entered into between the two participants that want to trade shares. And it has gone to the Reservoir Committee and the Authority Board, and both the Reservoir Committee and the Authority Board have approved this reassignment of shares, at which, and now it's being brought through to the final process for us to just sign the agreement saying that, yes, we're okay with it. And so it's the last step that this is only providing authorization of, and it's just the redistribution between the two.
Right, but doesn't the, as I understood what Director Bauman just asked, was that this also gives you authority to approve all future, and I'm not comfortable with that. I want to know what's going on up there. I don't feel like I should have to watch every meeting to know. And this is a good, this would, this is a good way to, it's a kind of a siren screen when too many of them want out. And I know that there's going to be more, but I think it's important to know how many more.
If I may just add on to a little bit of what you had said. Well, first, I would like to say that, I mean, happy to bring back, my proposal would be every time anything like this happens is that I can give a report out, such as in the general manager's report, because I do think that it's important for us to be able to move expeditiously as we move through this process. I believe that when the Reservoir Committee and the Authority Board takes this up, I think there's a lot of scrutiny that goes onto these things if there's any issues, such as if a participant was wanting to, it materially changed voting powers. I think that would be a point of interest that would be discussed as well. In this instance, it's very minor, and each participant has, one of them is less than 1%, the other one's just north of 1% of participation. So it's limited. So there's no changing of voting powers and how much weight they have from my perspective, as well as they wanted to make, the participants wanted to make it clear, Maricopa Ridge wanted to make it clear that this was not, in this instance, was not a signal of their lack of faith within the project. And so they are not getting out of the project. They're just redistributing some of their shares.
Right, but it's a way for me to judge my faith in the project. You know, if a third of the participants bail, you know, I want to know that. And the
Absolutely.
only way I can know that is if, you know, if it comes before us each time it happens. Otherwise, I got to watch those meetings, you know.
Would it, Director Grasher, would it make sense for the general manager to just report back, or do you want to be?
No, I
do you
want
your
it to
vote
be officially
consulted?
voted on by the board. I think this board needs to be more engaged on this subject for sure. It has the potential of having extreme financial stress on the agency and our ratepayers, and we need to know as a board, you know, just exactly how this project is going. You know, I feel like I watched enough of their meetings to know that I could miss 4 or 5 or 8 or 10 and go back and it's, you know, pretty much pick up where it left off. But we're at a critical point now, and to let go of this kind of oversight, in my view, would be a mistake for the board. I think you need to pay attention to this stuff. And the only way to do that is to be engaged in these exchanges. So that's my recommendation.
If I may add just a little bit more information to one of the comments that you just made, that if people are getting out of the project, and there is a different process for that, when and if that comes, if we come to a point where project participants believe that they are not, for other reasons, or it's not financially feasible for them as the project moves forward towards this investor commitment period, if they indicate that they do not want to continue, there is a waiting list that would be activated, and that's in a different process that would be gone through, and that is something that, you know, I definitely come back and communicate to the board on.
Okay. Secretary Treasurer Ortega, any questions or comments?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with something of this nature being assigned to the general manager. I have faith that she is quite capable of making a determination whether something is going to be materially impacting the agency. I also want to clarify a point that Director Grasha made. He mentioned ratepayers, and I think this is actually being paid for out of our taxpayer money. Is that correct?
At this point in time, it is not being paid by our state
Oh,
water
correct.
project tax,
Okay,
no.
thank you for that clarification.
Ongoing discussion. of
Yeah,
the
that's
contract.
right.
The source of funds at this point in time has been our general purpose tax, which is unrestricted, that has been used for this purpose to date.
Right, but it's not coming out of ratepayer money.
It is not coming out of ratepayer money at this point in time.
Right.
In the future,
could.
we are still working through the ultimate methods of payment.
Right.
However, if we are consistent with our, how we handle our payments, there will be portions that will go onto the rate, such as for transportation
Uh-huh.
of that. So there's a difference between the capital participation and there's a difference between kind of the water supply, each dollar that is applied to every acre foot of water that actually makes it here that
Right, gotcha.
doesn't otherwise get charged. We do here at DWA, we handle those very separately to make sure that people are using the water are the ones paying for the benefit.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Vice President McKenna?
Well, I hear Director Grass's concerns. I share them a little bit, but at the same time, that board of the Sites Authority could make these changes, and we would just have to go along with them. Isn't that correct?
No.
It's not correct?
The Sites Authority Board and the Reservoir Committee, they do, the Reservoir Committee is made up of participants. So the interest of the participants is shared on that board, making those decisions, as with the delegates that have been placed on that board from each participant. And the Reservoir Committee is more of, some of them are participants, but they're more of the oversight, local oversight. And while we developed this project with that Reservoir Committee and board's direction and oversight, they're developing a project that ultimately will be proposed to this agency to decide whether you want to invest or not, or continue your investment or not. So while not every single decision of the Reservoir Committee and Authority Board goes to home boards, it has input from every potential future participant to develop a buildable, affordable project.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but as a 3% holder of this project, we could easily be outvoted. So I like the idea that it's coming back to this board when there's a change, but a change like this is insignificant to us. So I'm sort of on the fence here because I would like the board to know what's going on up there, but at the same time, if we're a 3% shareholder and they make a change, what are we going to do?
The way that the agreement is written is that it requires all participants to sign off. So if any one participant does not sign off on it, despite the recommendation and the approval of the Reservoir Committee and the Authority Board, to my knowledge, it will hold up the transfer of this capacity interest.
I wonder who wrote that. Okay, thanks, I appreciate that.
Director Grasha?
I think it's imperative that we as a board, keep abreast of these situations as it's our responsibility, it's our primary responsibility, and to, subcontract that out completely to staff, we would just be basically sitting here, assuming that everything is proper and I don't think we can afford to do that. This project is heading towards to us, $500 million, somewhere much higher than it was when I got here less than 4 years ago. So, I think we owe it to everybody. Each of us owe it to each other, and each of us owe it to our constituents to be able to engage on this at any time because of the absolutely choking expense that we're taking on. And that's just, I'm not going to budge from that. I think it's our responsibility. to be aware of this stuff, and I'm not comfortable passing it on. That's all.
So my question is, if we ask you to bring back this to get authorization from the board each time, do you think that will hold up anything or greatly impact your way of getting things done?
I believe it would be administratively cumbersome to do that, given what the intent of bringing it back would try to accomplish. I'm not quite seeing what the benefit is to providing that additional administrative step. And the reason being is that we are not yet to a place of investor commitment. We are still in the development of the project and determining what the final participation is for every individual district. And that is different for every individual district, what their needs are. And so as we several years ago, the participation was set based off of initial thoughts and forecasts of what the participation of each individual participant needed for their own water supply. And as we gain more information, there is more clarity, there's more information to be able to make the appropriate decisions for each individual entity, which means that there could be a little bit of changes, but the goal here was to make sure that it essentially stayed inside the site's family at this point in time to give the opportunity for all of the participants that made the early commitment to participate and help to fund the development of this project to have the first right of refusal of whatever capacity came available. And so those conversations are ones that have been had between different agencies, and I'm sure will continue to happen as we are gaining more information in these very final stages of this development project planning process. So I see it as the Reservoir Committee and Authority Board have already made the approval of the assignment of shares. It was a unanimous vote. And that to me says that there are not concerns within the participants that will materially change anything, such as voting rights of the future voting rights, current and future voting rights as we move into the construction phase and operation phase and governance and oversight of that reservoir. So I do not see that bringing each individual action to the board will provide any substantial benefit. I do agree that it is important to stay engaged, and it is my job to make sure that you are appropriately informed so that when we get to the point where we have the investor commitment decision here, that you have all the information that you need and enough time with that information to make the final investor commitment here for this agency and our participation.
I move that we authorize the transfer, but we do not extend the ability to staff to make these decisions without our participation. Thank you. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second that. And I want to say that I see two dangers here. One is that participants will flee the project, and the other is that participants will crowd into the project. There could be substantial changes when we come to that point of making the investment. And I would like to have foreknowledge of that because it might impact what we do. So if this were happening in the background and we weren't paying attention, I would be uncomfortable with that. So I support Director Grass's motion, and that's why I think we should hold back on approving a general manager. We meet every 2 weeks, 3 sometimes. It's pretty quick. We can decide on these probably faster than that board can. So I encourage you to vote for the motion as amended, rather.
Any other discussion? Comments? I have one comment. I think that the general manager could sign off on anything that's a non-material change as we move forward. And if there's a material change to our voting rights or our investment or anything like that, I think it just should definitely come back to the board. But I would leave it up to the general manager's discretion with that, and continue to report out as things are, in each general manager's report, if there's any changes or any discussions at the committee and project, what are they called? Sites, projects, participants. If there's any discussions that you hear that are coming up. But I believe that she should have the authorization to sign off on any non-material changes.
Madam President?
Yes.
I kind of think that's the intent of what this
Yes.
is. And I would think that's what it is.
Okay, so we will do a roll call vote on the motion on the table.
Director Bowman,
No, negative.
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer Ortega,
No.
Vice President McKenna,
Aye.
and President Bloomer.
No.
Motion fails 3-2.
Okay, before I make a motion, if I make a motion on as this is presented, is it understood that with any material changes that you will come back to the board?
I think just as a point of clarification, General Manager Sines can correct me. I think it's actually even more limited than that. I think what she's requesting is delegation of board authority to her or her designee to sign off on changes in participant share only, as they may be, traded between each other, and certainly before, commitment level, under the agreement between the benefits and obligations. Anyway, is that correct?
That is mostly correct.
Got it.
So yes, it is limiting, it is written to be very limiting, just say the trading of shares between current participants as a limiting factor, because it does not impact our rights and our participation and anything of that nature. So, but I hear the material impact here. And so that brings a couple things to mind. Of course, we could set like a cap, like what if the material change would change 10% in the voting shares of either reservoir capacity or downstream capacity, two very distinct things. So, I mean, we could put something like that in there so you have the assurance that, we're going to bring something to you in advance if there is going to be a material change defined as will change the capacity interest in the reservoir or downstream capacity by 10% or more. A second thought that occurs to me is that I hear the concern. I hear the concern that, we want to know what's happening because it signals the viability of the project. And as I had previously mentioned, there is a way to handle if participants no longer can or desire to enter into the project. There is the waiting list. And to be able to bring in new participants. But if there's been an agreement between two participants to trade the capacity, essentially still keeping the project whole as far as participation goes, without bringing anybody else in. If we do not go through the ministerial function of just saying that yes, to transfer it, even though, because it's already been approved by the Reservoir Committee and Authority Board, we would essentially be holding each individual participant hostage. It might not be the right word. I know it's not the right word, but we are not allowing them to make the decisions that are appropriate for their agency for them to be able to participate in the project as a whole. So if someone came in saying, I want to participate in 5%, but hey, that was a moonshot for me. I really wanted to see this reservoir come to fruition, but I can afford 2.5%. And you have another participant whose other water development efforts have not been successful to date, and now they're looking for someplace else to increase their water supply. Then that gives them the ability between the two participants to trade those shares. Again, as I said before, with the new information that they have and their ability to participate. If we do not allow that to happen, then you have someone that may not be able to sign on at all because they cannot afford or do not need the water. So I see it as kind of a unnecessary roadblock that will limit the ability for the sites project to be successful.
Well, I'll just say that I'm opposed to further dilution of the board's responsibility on these matters. And, you know, it's too much. Giving away too much authority essentially gives away all the authority. And it is our authority. It is something that has got to be acknowledged by this board that, you know, it's our responsibility, and we have to know what's going on. And in my view, the Sites project is on the precipice of complete collapse. I believe the court just overturned their financing abilities. I think, well, that my understanding is that last court ruling affected both projects. So I think we need to be engaged, but I understand not everyone agrees with me, so we'll see how it all works out in the end. But you're better off maintaining that authority and oversight, because without the information, you're just floating around in a cloud and have no idea what's being done on your behalf. And frankly, it's irresponsible, but that's just me.
Director McKenna, or Vice President McKenna.
Just a final comment. I'll go along with the board, with what the board decides, obviously, but if you argue that it's important not to hold something up, you're also arguing that it's important. And if it's important, it should come to this dais. That's my view.
Okay. So if anybody wants to make a motion or on the action item to authorize general manager, I'll make a motion, actually. I'll make a motion to authorize the general manager to approve Sites project assignment of project shares.
I'll second that.
So first by me and a second by Secretary Treasurer Ortega. Roll call vote.
Director Bowman?
Aye.
Director Gracia?
No.
Secretary Treasurer Ortega?
Sorry.
That was last year.
Still voting after him.
Aye.
Vice President McKenna?
Aye.
And President Bloomer?
Aye.
Motion passes.
You gave up your parking space and your authority over the Sites project.
So general manager's report, general manager signs.
We actually do have one presentation. There's a
I'm
discussion
sorry.
item, number 8.
My bad. Discussion item, presentation on Senate Bill 707 and new Brown Act requirements. Mr. Stewart and Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, President Bloomer, members of the board. As I'm sure you are aware, there are some major Brown Act updates that went into effect January 1. My colleague Elise Taylor is on the line. She has read the bill many times, and she wrote the legal alert that was sent out to all of our clients. So I thought that she'd be the best person to come and give you the presentation. This is, she'll explain in more detail, but the law separates public agencies into two bodies, eligible and non-eligible. We are in the non-eligible category, which is great. You know, a lot of your cities, your counties, your big districts are eligible, and the changes are much more extensive and hard to implement. You know, she'll explain in more detail, but we are in the non-eligible category, so there's not a ton that's going to change, but the changes will be good for you to know. So that's what she's she's going to explain to you in better detail. Thanks, Elise, for being here.
Hi, of course, no problem. Glad to be here. Glad to share updates. Let me see if I can share my screen with you. That might be easier. Let's see. Stop.
Hey, Elise. We're having a little
Yeah.
of a hard time hearing you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
That's better, actually. Yeah. You may need to speak up a little bit. Sorry about that.
Okay. No, it's okay. Can you hear me now? Does this work? Good. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can you see my presentation?
We are only seeing the non-presentation view.
Oh no. One second. I'm sorry. Okay. Present slideshow. Sorry about this.
You know, Elise, we actually have the slides. Would it be easier just to ask us to move slides?
That's so much easier. Let's
Okay.
do that. Okay, perfect. So hi everyone. As Colin mentioned, I'm Elise Taylor. I'm an associate at our Ontario office, and I'm just going to go over the Brown Act 707 updates. I'm going to start off with a little brief overview of the bill. We'll go into some of the bodies that are covered under this new update, and then we'll go over some of the specific rules regarding teleconferencing that are applicable to the agency. Next slide, please. And next slide, thanks. So SB 707 is effective as of January 1st of this year. There are some portions that will be effective as of July 1st, but those won't really apply to the agency. The whole purpose of this update was really to restructure and modernize the Brown Act to reflect some of the recent technological advances that have happened, and also to allow for greater access to the public. Some of these updates include for teleconferencing changes. We have new requirements for certain legislative bodies. We also have expanded teleconferencing options, and then there's some other miscellaneous changes that are pretty minor. Next slide. Next slide. So these are the two major types of legislative bodies that are covered under this new Brown Act update. So we have the eligible legislative bodies on the left side, and we have all other bodies on the right side. Good for the agency. We do not have to worry about the other types of legislative bodies. Those will not apply to us. We're going to be in this red square because the agency has a board that fits this description. So most of the Brown Act changes actually won't even affect the agency. They're more akin, or they're more in effect for large city councils, large cities, counties of that nature. Next slide. Okay, so for the updates for eligible legislative bodies, we don't have to worry about those. Nothing to see here. We're all good. We can wipe our sweat. And now we're moving on to teleconferencing updates. So this is where a majority of the changes that affect the agency live. So for the classic teleconferencing rules, there's really no change. All of the rules still stay the same. So if the agency is already using the classic rules, there really aren't any updates there. You still have to have the agenda posted at all the meeting locations, including at the teleconference locations. Those locations need to be available for the public to meet at. You'll still have to have a quorum that participates from within the agency's jurisdiction, and all votes still have to be taken by roll call. So these are just the plain classic rules. Nothing has changed here. Next slide. So one of the first major updates comes in the form of reasonable accommodations. So prior to this bill passing, there was actually no carve out specifically allowing for teleconferencing to be used as a reasonable accommodation in compliance with the ADA. So now there's an explicit rule that allows any member of a legislative body to be able to use teleconferencing as a reasonable accommodation in compliance with the ADA and similar state law. So normally what would happen is that a member of the board could say, you know, I have, and this wouldn't be something that needs to be brought to a public meeting. This can be something that's handled through HR or that's handled through the clerk or whichever entity normally deals with accommodation requests. And they'll just request their accommodations to attend via teleconference. And then that member must participate by using both audio and visual technology, unless they have a physical condition related to their disability that prevents them from participating using a video. And then before any action is taken, that member would also have to let the board know whether someone in the room with them is 18 or older, and just a general description of their relationship with that person. So whether it's spouse, caretaker, sibling, child, something of that nature. This type of participation will actually be treated as in person, even though they will be participating remotely. And this will include for quorum purposes. And then all the other Brown Act requirements that I previously mentioned, so those regarding posting the agenda at all teleconference locations and being able to attend from those teleconference locations won't apply here. So the public will be able to know this person's direct address, and they also won't be able to participate from that address. Next slide. So now we're going to move into some of the more major updates applicable to the board, and these are going to be for alternative teleconferencing methods. So this is like an umbrella term that we use and encompasses all other teleconferencing methods besides the classic method and besides the reasonable accommodation. So there are a list of general rules that apply to this sort of method, and then there are specific rules for each category. So first we'll go over the overall rules, and then we'll go into each of the specific categories. Next slide, please. So the general rules, most of these are still the same. So we still have to allow for two-way participation. So this would be allowing for two-way audio-visual communication or two-way telephone service with live webcasting. You'll still have to identify if someone in the room is 18 or older and your relationship to that person. You'll have to post the agenda instructions on how the public can participate and provide public comment. And you'll also have to ensure that you have procedures in place for accepting requests for reasonable accommodations. All of this is pretty much the same. There's no change here. Next slide. Here, we also have additional rules for alternative teleconferencing. So we'll also need to ensure that people can provide comments in real time. You'll have to allow a reasonable time for people to request to speak. And the two new rules here are that if there's a disruption that prevents broadcasting for some reason, the agency will actually have to stop and try to fix that disruption before they can move further. So this is a new rule in place, just really to ensure that there's public access to the entire meeting. So if there's a disruption that happens, let's say for some reason the Zoom goes down and the public is not able to see or hear what's going on, the meeting would have to stop and they would have to fix that issue just to ensure that the public is able to access the meeting at all times. And then the other new rule here is that the minutes must also state the names of the members who attended via teleconference and the method that they used. Under this update, agencies or legislative bodies as a whole are allowed to use any of the teleconferencing methods, no matter if one member is using a different method. So if one member is using Just Cause, another member can use an eligible subsidiary body. There's just different ways that you can attend via teleconference. It doesn't have to be set to where if one person uses one method, everyone has to use the same method. Next slide. So now we'll go into the specific rules that apply to each of these types of methods for alternative teleconferencing. So these two are actually really simple. There are no major changes here except for proclaimed state emergencies. The legislator has now extended the use of alternative teleconferencing to encompass local emergencies as defined under the Health and Safety Code. So this really came about after the fires that occurred last year. A lot of the fires affected certain parts of Southern California. They didn't go all the way up to Northern California. So there was a lot of waiting that had to be done until the governor declared a state of emergency. Now we have it where local entities, the governing body of a local agency can declare that there's a local emergency. So this would normally be maybe a city council, maybe a board of a county or some sort. Those would be the entities that could declare a local emergency, and then that would allow for alternative teleconferencing to be used. The other change happens under Just Cause. So Just Cause has been in effect since, I believe, 2022, right after the height of COVID. And this use of alternative teleconferencing includes all of the methods listed, so childcare, caregiving, travel, but the new addition is actually for military service. Prior to this bill being passed, there was no carve out for military service, so they put that in there, and that's really the only change that's happened. All of the use limits will still apply for Just Cause, so if you meet once a month, you can use Just Cause 2 times a year. If you meet twice a month, you can use Just Cause for 5 times throughout the year, and those are the same as they've always been.
Elise,
Next slide.
Elise,
Yeah.
can I ask a question? On this
Yeah.
state and local emergencies, you said that it's usually a city or a county. Can a special district use the same? So our board could declare a state of emergency for our area, and then we,
Yes.
assuming that the factors are met.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So our next method is for eligible subsidiary bodies. So this is an entire new method that was not in effect prior to this bill passing. This method is really going to be used for smaller advisory bodies that don't have any final decision-making power. So this is going to be useful for recruitment committees or conservation committees or, community engagement committees. Really, any standing committee could probably use this method, so long as they don't have any primary jurisdiction over elections, budget, police oversight, taxes, or any spending proposals. And they also are not allowed to be able to take final action on regulations, contracts, licenses, or other entitlements. The members of a subsidiary body can meet remotely under this method, but also the entire board could meet. The entire body could meet remotely under this method as well. For the subsidiary bodies, you still have to have a physical location where the public can attend. So if the entire committee is eligible to meet remotely, they can all meet remotely, but they'll still have to have a physical place where the public can meet. So you'll have to have a staff person that will be able to allow the public in and make sure that they have everything set up for their meeting. The governing body, so let's say the agency wanted to adopt this method, the board would have to adopt findings and repeat those findings every 6 months, essentially saying, yes, this smaller committee, this smaller body can meet via teleconference. It's useful for them for these reasons, and just state that on the record. And then the subsidiary body would also have to approve use by majority vote. They would have to say, yes, we do want to meet via teleconference, let's vote on it. And then that would be all that's needed for them to meet via teleconference. The down part of this of this method is that it's not going to be applicable for any elected officials serving in their official capacity. So if the subsidiary bodies are only comprised of elected officials, then those bodies would not be able to meet using this method. So normally, maybe you'll have some entities will have a committee, or they'll have a smaller body that includes people from the public, people that aren't elected but maybe are just assigned certain positions. Those individuals would be able to use this method, even where elected members would not be able to. And then in addition, there's also certain requirements that allow for the subsidiary body to present recommendations. This is pretty common. A lot of agencies will already allow their smaller committees to do a presentation or present findings of a recent meeting that they had. So this just explicitly states that those bodies are allowed to do so. But how they do so and the timing of all of that is really up to the governing body to decide. Next slide. And the last alternative teleconferencing method comes with for eligible multi-jurisdictional bodies. So these are the legislative body. So this method would be applicable for a legislative body that has appointed members from different local agencies. So this is really common for the legislative body of a joint powers agency, or even or a district or an agency like Metropolitan Water District, where they have members from various member agencies that are from different locations. To use this type of method, you have to adopt a resolution that will allow the members to use this teleconferencing, and you have to adopt that resolution during a regular session, a regular open session meeting, so it can't be done during closed session. The body would be able to use this method if they identify on the agenda which members are going to participate remotely. That member has to be more than 20 miles away from any physical meeting location that's open to the public. And then they'll have to use both audio and visual technology during the meeting. So that caveat regarding the 20 miles is really important, because if you have a large body that has multiple meeting locations, that member that wants to utilize this method would have to be 20 miles away from every single physical location. So if there's a location in 3 different cities, that member has to be 20 miles away from every single city. This could also be used if the member is out of town for some reason. They would be 20 miles away from every single meeting location. They could probably utilize this method as well. The quorum would still have to participate from one or more physical location that's open to the public and within the agency boundaries. And then the same use limits that we talked about for just cause. So you can meet twice a month. You can use this method twice a year if you meet once a month, or you can use it 5 times per year if you meet twice a month. Those same limits would apply. And then if a member is going to use this method, they won't be able to receive their meeting stipend or their compensation. So another little caveat there. Okay. And finally, we're getting to our miscellaneous changes. So these are just some additional changes that happened under the Brown Act. As I mentioned, a lot of the changes were regarding just restructuring and trying to make the entire act more readable, and also to increase public participation. So some additional changes are that for social media restrictions, there used to be a ban on members of an agency being able to communicate over social media and have what they call a serial meeting, which is just when you meet outside of the normal Brown Act meeting. This could be you're texting each other and you're talking about an item that's going to come up, or you're on Facebook in a group and you're talking about an item that's going to come up. Those are serial meetings. So essentially, prior to this prior to this bill, there was a restriction that prevented using social media to have serial meetings. And that restriction was going to end in January 2026. The legislator just extended that. So now that restriction lives forever. So you can't use Facebook, Twitter, any type of social media to have a serial meeting. The best thing to do, and what we always recommend, is just try not to go on social media and talk to each other. Even liking someone's post or sharing someone's comment regarding an item that's going to be brought up or regarding an item that's even just within your jurisdiction could be seen as a serial meeting. So you just want to try to prevent any appearance of there being a serial meeting going on. In addition, the agency legislative bodies will have to provide copies of the Brown Act to every member of their body. It can be paper or electronic, and you only have to provide it one time. In addition, there are several updates for special meetings that have also happened. So prior to this bill, you actually couldn't waive your notice for a special meeting except by Telegram. I don't know why we were still using Telegram at this point, but now they've extended it to also, you can waive notice by using phone or email, not just Telegram. In addition, you'll have to post if you have a special meeting. You'll have to post the agenda online if you have a website. Most agencies already do this, so this isn't really that big of an update. But if you have a website, you have to post your special meeting agendas. In addition, you're not allowed to have special meetings for discussion of salary or benefits of the legislative body. This was a pre-existing rule, but it only applied to certain executives. Now they've expanded it to also apply to executives and the entire legislative body as a whole. And additionally, you're now able to remove disruptive virtual attendees from meetings. Most bodies have already had the rule that they're allowed to remove physical disruptive people from the meeting, but now this applies to virtual meetings as well. Just a rule of thumb, you really want to try to mitigate the issue before you remove anyone. So if someone is being disruptive over the meeting, you could try first just muting them, turning off their camera, limiting their access to be able to engage. And if they continue to disrupt, then you can move forward with actually removing them from the meeting altogether. And last slide. Those are all our updates. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me, or you can send me an email or give me a call if that's easier as well.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. Director Bowman, any questions?
None from me.
Director Gracia?
There were questions that I had through the presentation, but I think it would just be laborious to go into them all. One of, though, that stands out was one of our most recent points was, can we block our fellow board members from being able to participate and then continue on with the discussion within our community? I don't know if they addressed that or not. I think that Brown says we're not allowed to block people, but I know everybody on this board has blocked people. And I don't know anyone that hasn't. So I wonder what you could contribute on that.
Director Gracia, when you say block?
Well, for instance, you can block their profile from being able to view what you're saying on, say, Facebook.
Oh, sure.
I can block somebody, and that prevents them from being able to click the like button as well as participating in a discussion. So it was just a thought that I had, and I don't know if they weighed in on that again. I thought that it comes down to, well, is that your campaign website or your district public persona, or is that a personal persona? So it gets kind of squishy, but I think if you're talking about agency business, it's a public.
Well, I don't think they discussed it in 707, so I think we're a little.
There was a mention of it in here.
Oh, there was. Well, so I think that they're there's a Supreme Court case that said that President Trump, I think it was about his Twitter account,
Right.
and that was, was a forum for public or political speech, so that he had to unblock people and anyone could access it. At least that's all. I mean, I think if you're using your social media to do a, official business or agency business, I think you probably can't do that. You can't block people from accessing it. But I can get you a more informed answer, at least unless you have one.
Well, I've noticed that, it's people that oppose the position you might be taking typically will engage on that post to try to force it to be taken down just by engagement. And, that squelches speech more than it enhances speech. So it was just a quandary that I was left with whether,
Okay, thank you.
Director Grasha, are you referring to in here, it was talked about the removal of disruptive virtual attendees. So to me, that is someone who is participating virtually.
Oh,
who
in a
is
meeting.
In a meeting,
Right.
in an agency board meeting that then becomes disruptive in one way or another,
Oh,
whether it be
no,
visually or audio,
Yeah.
that we can take measures to mute them, turn off their camera, as Elise had indicated, and then the final step would be we have the authority to remove that disruptive member from the meeting. And so
Okay.
that's what I believe the intention is here.
So you can remove them from a meeting, but you can't remove them from discussing or being disruptive on Facebook.
I think that's right. Elise, can you go into a little
Yes.
bit more detail quickly on that point?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. When we're talking about removal of virtual attendees, we're talking about virtual attendees of the meeting. So someone that's in the meeting that's causing ruckus, or if someone somehow just jumps onto the meeting that's not supposed to be there and they're showing something or saying something that is inappropriate, you're able to remove that person from the meeting. When we're talking about the social media restrictions, that's in regard to having a serial meeting. So that's in regards to if two members of the board are on Facebook and they're talking to each other, they're liking each other's posts or comments regarding an item that's within the agency's jurisdiction, you cannot do that because that would count as a serial meeting in violation of the Brown Act.
And to
Thank you.
further on that, Director Grasha, I do hear your inquiry about the ability to essentially block so that other individuals cannot participate. We can look into that with legal counsel and get you a response specifically regards to that, because it does seem to be outside the scope of this presentation.
Yeah, I think he has it right, but I also think that in practice, it's another, I know there are members of this board that have blocked other elected officials because they didn't particularly care for the candidates that they were endorsing for particular office at election time.
I hear you. Yeah.
And it's just weird, and the people that do it are weird, and it's just like a creep factor that's just off the charts.
Okay.
But we'll see
All right, well, thank
how it
you.
goes.
Okay, Secretary Treasurer Ortega, any questions or comments?
Regarding the presentation, I think it was very thorough, and I very much appreciate the being able to go through this with you. So thank you. With regard to the comments about Facebook and social media, I think it actually would benefit the board to have that kind of follow-up from legal counsel, and specifically to make some differentiation between somebody's personal account and somebody's public account. Thank you.
Vice President McKenna?
I appreciate the broad scope of the presentation. Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor. I wonder if you could boil it down to how it affects our board meetings, executive committee meetings, and ad hoc committee meetings, like one page for each, so that I could follow it more easily. I'd appreciate that. Thanks.
Thanks, Director McKenna. At least maybe we'll prep a memo and we'll circulate it. Sure.
Okay, I don't have any further questions. Thank you very much for the presentation. And now we'll move on to item number 9, General Manager's Report. General Manager Science.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. So to start off, I'd like to provide you an update on the Sites Reservoir project. As you know, the project continues to progress towards entry into the construction phase of the project. And during the January 16th, 2026 Reservoir Committee and Authority Board meeting, there were several key actions that were taken to advance the project to prepare for a transition from phase 2, which is the planning phase, into phase 3 of the project, which is construction. The first one that I have on here really is the most significant of the listing, where the reservoir package was assigned, the construction manager at risk role was assigned to Bernard Construction Company. And next step, as far as assigning and procuring a construction manager at risk, will be for a conveyance package. So the project is being sectioned up into different elements. The reservoir package, along with, I believe, roads is in the current one, and then the next one we're going to be procuring is going to be for the conveyance construction manager at risk. And along with that, there was an authorization of task order number 1 for Bernard Construction to commence the preliminary pre-construction services through December 31st, 2026. And in addition to that, as a result of the extensive discussion and response to protestants with the assignment of the CMAR contract to Bernard, there was an add-on to their first task item because part of the issue at stake was that there still needs to be a project labor agreement executed with the trade unions. And that has been discussed extensively with the trade unions and had not been executed yet because they needed a contract in order to execute the PLA. But the PLA is required to be able to execute the contract. Not execute the contract, but it is a requirement of the contract is to enter into that. So while we were in that room, there was a Building Trades Council representative there, and he had agreed, along with the executives from Bernard Construction, that they would expeditiously execute the project labor agreement for this project, or for this portion of the project. And the thought is within the next 30 days, at least, to come back and either have the final executed or a substantial update at the next board meeting, next Authority Board and Reservoir Committee meeting in February. Also, as we get closer to the final stages of the planning phase of this project, more information is known as we've gone through different mitigation factors and everything, such as land acquisition, biological surveys, cultural consultations, permit authorization, and the obtaining of mitigation land. So when the last project scheduled was approved in October of 2023, we had not yet entered into some of these actions. So as we've entered into, or the project has entered into them, more information becomes known as far as realistic timelines, as well as the minor delay that we've experienced with acquiring the water right, which is expected here within the next month or two. It was originally expected to be the draft water right to be provided in November. Now we're thinking within the next couple of months. So with all of that in mind, the Sites Project Authority had requested to extend the timeline while folding an additional year, while folding in all of these critical paths activities that we now have more information on, and in consultation with the construction manager at risk and the proposers for that contract, the information that was obtained through that process was also folded into this more realistic timeline. So that was another action that was taken. So now the project completion date has moved from the end of 2032 to the end of 2033, which the project authority does believe that, staff believes that is a realistic time frame. Additionally, the Sites Authority continues to bring on key personnel to the project, building out their kind of structure within the project as more labor and key personnel and skills are needed during different phases of the planning of the project and construction of the project. So with that, a gentleman from Water Resources has been brought on for a limited period of time to provide deputy environmental planning and permitting services through the end of 2026, and is anticipated that that is a limited time contract and it will end there because those services are only needed at that point in time. Also, the authorization to create an additional public benefit for the project for drought emergency supplies. This additional benefit will provide the ability to apply to the California Water Commission for an additional $638 million. I apologize, I only put $638. It's $1 million in additional supplemental funding. That'd be a lot of effort to get $638. An additional supplemental funding determination in addition to the already $1.1 billion of maximum conditional eligibility determination under Prop 1. And lastly, the Sites Authority provided an update on the draft of finance. Participants have it in hand, and we are reviewing it, and they are requesting feedback by March 1st, 2026, and I am in correspondence with them as I do have feedback to provide to that in effort for the final plan to be realistic, clear, and understandable for participants and our home boards to be able to make those final determinations of feasibility for our own agencies once we come to the final investor commitment period. So moving on to the Delta Conveyance Project Validation Proceedings updates, and this is an item that Director Grasha had made mention of before. So the Department of Water Resources is currently undertaking efforts to validate their authority to issue revenue bonds to finance a Delta Conveyance project. And on December 31st, the 3rd District Court of Appeals issued their opinion rejecting the 2020 validation attempt. DWR argued that the project was a further modification of the Feather River project under provision tied to the original State Water project, and the court found that the bond plan was too vague and gave the department unfettered discretion to decide what to build and how to pay for it. Now, this decision does impact DWR's ability to lock in financial commitments for the water contractors and shall stall the state's preferred path of funding the project. Now, DWR has already submitted in January 2025, with case pending an additional validation attempt that is already underway, which already addresses some of the concerns that were raised within the ruling on the 2020 validation attempt. And the new filing does define a narrower project scope to fit within the constraints of the existing law and other efforts. And one of the reasons why it was originally pretty vague was because we were still in the planning phase, and so they didn't have the detail in order to define it and narrow the scope a bit more, which the 2025 validation proceeding does attempt to do with the new information as this project has been developed over time. In addition, the validation proceedings through the courts, which are underway, and their efforts, and we discussed this at length at our Sacramento meetings here last week. Other financing routes all will still remain in addition that are legislative authorization or a public bond measure. And I would like to update as an outcome of the meetings that I had last week in Sacramento. On Thursday, January 15th, DWR did file a petition with the Court of Appeals to rehear the 2020 case. The petition asked the court to strike the concerns from the ruling that were inaccurate in order to clarify the incorrect factual assertions that were included in the ruling. And the court has until January 30th to act on this petition. So there are still significant efforts on this front, and just the bottom line is the project is still moving forward, and there's still paths for us to get to financing of the project. Moving on to the USBR. The Bureau of Reclamation released the draft Colorado River Long-Term Operations EIS. And on January 10th, the Bureau released its draft environmental impact statement, which outlined potential alternatives for the long-term management of the Colorado River after the operation guidelines expire. The current ones expire on October 1st, 2026. This draft EIS does present multiple alternatives, but it does not provide a preferred alternative within the EIS because they have emphasized that Reclamation's continued preference is for a consensus-based agreement amongst the states, the 7 basin states. However, the EIS does include a basic coordination alternative that could be implemented in the absence of an agreement. This alternative will require significant reductions in the lower basin use of up to 1.48 million acre feet, which impacts largely will be determined by priority of water rights. The Department of Interior has set February 14th, 2026 for the deadline for basin states to reach an agreement, and staff will continue to monitor developments and evaluating any potential implications for DWA as we move forward. We have done a little bit of remodeling over in our recycled water facility building. At the end of December 2025, we completed renovations of the reclamation plant laboratory building. And this new office is for the laboratory director. Currently, the laboratory director had an office here and had a little table over there along with, of course, that's where the lab is, and he spent a lot of his time. So this addition of the office in immediate proximity to the lab allows the lab director to perform the administrative duties more efficiently. And also, the new office addition allows the opportunity for the office space that he did occupy here in the operation centers to be utilized for our growing staff, as we do have a few more positions that were budgeted in our previous budget that we needed a place to put them before we could hire them. And so that has freed us up to be able to do so. And now we have a couple faces here in the room with us. We have our promotions for the fourth quarter of October to December 2025. We've had a few promotions and certifications received that I wanted to recognize the recipients for their hard work and dedication to receive these promotions and certifications. As the promotions are a result of exemplary work and dedication into the jobs that they do here at the agency, as well as the certifications provide the proof of the knowledge that our staff possesses and their qualifications to be able to run and operate our system. And so their dedication to study for and receive these certifications, test and receive these certifications is greatly appreciated, and it provides us the ability to provide consistent, reliable water service to our customers. And so with that, Priscilla Ramirez, she has been promoted from Administrative Assistant 3 to Senior Administrative Assistant, as you've seen her here a little bit more, and participating here in the board meetings. And for the certifications, we have Salvador Villa. Would you please stand up? He has received his Treatment 2 water treatment certification. And we also have Joshua Haltman, who has been busy studying for and receiving his Water Treatment Grade 3 certification, as well as his Water Distribution 5 certification, which is, I believe this is the highest that we can go here at the agency for what our system is rated for. So it is quite an accomplishment, and I thank you very much. And for this Palm Springs Air Museum Vietnam Wall installation, Desert Water Agency is assisting with the Palm Springs Air Museum with the setup and tear down the support for the traveling Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall installation in early February. The wall will be on display for 1 week in conjunction with the museum's annual gala on February 7th, 2026, and this wall is here to recognize the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War. DWA in prior years, when this wall has come around, staff has assisted with the setup and tear down of this memorial wall when it has come to the Coachella Valley in prior years. In addition to being a strong community partner, DWA staff engagement in this effort aligns with the agency's value of teamwork, integrity, and reliability, as well as DWA's ongoing commitment to support veterans both within the organization and throughout the community. And I have a verbal update that is not in this packet because it just happened last night. So as you, I'm sure, are aware, the Coachella Valley experienced a 4.9 magnitude earthquake last night at 5:56 p.m. And with the epicenter, which was approximately 12 miles northeast of Indio, with several aftershocks related to the initial quake with magnitudes of up to 3.4. After the initial event, our construction staff drove around and inspected some of our vulnerable known areas and did not visually identify any impacts. Additionally, our operations staff have investigated and found that the seismic actuators on our reservoirs were confirmed to have not engaged, and the water levels and the system pressures have been verified to be stable and within normal operating ranges. Proper flow was confirmed at the Cathedral Canyon Lift Station monitoring site to verify that the wastewater conveyance system was also not impacted. So we did have an earthquake last night. Bottom line is our facilities are holding strong, but we will continue to monitor and let you know if anything changes. Moving on to system leaks. Over the past couple of weeks, since December 29th to January 12th, we experienced 17 leaks. And of that, it expended 143 man-hours for those 17 leaks. And all are consistently on bare unlined steel pipe, as consistent with prior reports. Now I'd like to pass it off to our HR Director, Hopping, to provide a highlight of our human resources meetings and events.
Let's see here. We had, for the highlights of the month, basically, business as usual. We did the catch up with the supervisor training, so that is complete. And then we're going to do another class of that once we have a couple foreman positions we're filling right now. Once those are filled, then we'll do another supervisor training. We have a new employee orientation. A new member of the conservation team joined us, so we completed that, and he's onboarded now. And then we've been doing the kickoff meetings for the NeoGov, which is the recruiting platform, and that's going really well. I expect that we won't have any issues with that. I think it seems to be pretty user-friendly. And I think that's it for me.
Thank you. Next, we have the Finance Director's meetings and activities. Finance Director Slough is on vacation, so I will report a few of the highlights for him. And one of the main things that is going to be taking up quite a bit of time is our Tyler EAM, Enterprise Asset Management platform. So when we purchased the Tyler Technologies kind of software bundle, technology bundle, we had several modules. This will be our I believe, 5th and final implementation for that. So we have done that kickoff, and you will see several meetings on his activities for the month of December and into January. Also, we have been working on the AMI, so Advanced Meter Reading RFP review. So we submitted for AMI portal to make sure that what our customers engage with for their more up-to-date meter readings is user-friendly and provides the necessary information both to staff and to our customers. So we have been going through that process procuring, and so they sent out the RFP, and then also in the beginning of January, they started to do those interviews and we're going through the selection process. And then to move on to my meetings and activities, a few of the highlights. On January 8th, we met with Krieger and Stewart, Assistant General Manager, Chief Engineer David Tate and I. We met with Krieger and Stewart for Chino Creek water supply analysis, as we are continuing to take a look into that system for the tram to see what our long-term options are to put that system, to make that system more reliable, as well as work in hand with the tram, as they are the only customer on that system.
Could you go back to that? Which one is that?
January 8th, it's the 4th line down on my meetings. KNS Chino Creek Water Supply Analysis. Krieger and Stewart is our outside engineering firm. And so we met with them we are developing a feasibility study of our potential options to partner with the tram with, so that,
Chino Creek Water Supply,
Mhm.
okay, okay.
that's correct. Yes, Chino Creek is the creek that supplies the tram system.
All right.
Mhm. And then also, again, last week I spent the week up at Delta Conveyance meet in Sacramento for Delta Conveyance meetings, state water contractor meetings, and sites reservoir meetings. And then brings us to today where we have our biweekly board meeting. And with that, that concludes the general manager's report, and I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Director Bowman, any questions?
None from me?
Director Grasha? Secretary Treasurer Ortega?
Yes, for Director Hopping, you mentioned the onboarding of the conservation specialist. There were 2 this month, or is there one still to come?
The one is scheduled for next Monday,
Right, okay,
so hopefully 2.
okay, thank you.
Vice
I have-
President
I have
McKenna?
none, thank you very much.
Okay, perfect. I have none as well. So we'll move on to item number 10, Director's Reports on Meetings and Events Attended on behalf of the agency. Director Bowman?
Yes, on the 12th, I did the Safe Surf Cybersecurity program. And on the 14th, I attended for the first time in a long time the DVBA luncheon that was held. The main speaker that day was the Indio city manager. He gave the highlight of what's happening in Indio. Very impressive. And it was a great lunch, and it was nice to talk with the other leaders and movers of the valley.
Perfect. Director Grasha?
I, of course, had a pretty busy couple of weeks. Going back to the 6th at when our last meeting, on the 8th, I did the Desert Valley Builders Association legislative meeting. And then on the 12th was the Desert Water Agency IT training. And then the 13th, Coachella Valley Water District Board of Directors meeting. And then on the 14th was the Desert Valley Builders Association, the same meeting Director Bauman spoke about. Had interesting exchange at my table. We had all the staff from, I think, with the exception of one congressman, all the staff from every Wallace, Gonzalez, and Dr. Ruiz staff sat at that table. And it was nice to have an audience that was interested in hearing my stories, and I shared many going back to my early days. And I think they all enjoyed it. I think I've got at least one on a new career path into water. So
Perfect.
then on, I think I have a stray. Yeah, that one, that's not water related. And that's it today.
Okay, thank you. Secretary Treasurer Ortega?
Yes, thank you. So in addition to the regular board meeting and the executive committee meeting last week, where I substituted for Vice President McKenna, on the 7th of January, there was the Aqua Regional Executive Committee members, the chair and vice chair meeting that was held virtually. This was the opportunity for essentially the new board for the next 2 years to commence business and also to accept the various committee assignments that had been finalized by President Avila. And there were quite a few people on this team and the staff that are now on some of those committees, which is exciting. And then yesterday, on the 19th, there was a 2-hour virtual meeting, again with the current Aqua board for the next 2 years that focused entirely on the executive director search. So we had a presentation from some of the HR members at Aqua, as well as the person leading the executive search through the firm that was hired. It was quite informative to go through what the job description looked like, and also what it gave us the board members an opportunity to voice what they felt the priorities should be in terms of the kind of candidate that will be sought. There was discussion on compensation, which was helpful as far as what would be advertised. The current plan is for those comments to be taken into account with regard to the final job posting, if you will, and that will likely go out on Monday. So it'll be available out Monday, at least to the public. There have been at least 12 potential candidates identified, and those were provided by members of the board prior to that meeting to the recruiter. Most of them are within the water agency family, as you likely expect. The emphasis has been on somebody who is well versed in California water, as opposed to water outside of the state of California, given the complexities that we have here in our state. It's a very aggressive timeline, I think, perhaps doable, but aggressive nonetheless. There will be a virtual meeting again toward the end of March with the same group of people. That will be the opportunity for the recruiter to present the list of the potential candidates that she believes are worthy of consideration to go forward. She expects that list to be about 6 to 9 people. And then there will be another virtual meeting the following week that will be interviews, an 8-hour virtual meeting of interviews with those candidates. That will be followed up by a final meeting in Sacramento in person for the board and for the candidates that will be selected for the final round. She expects that to be 2 to 3. Again, that will take place, I think it's on the 17th of April. And hopefully an acceptance of offer will be made by the end of the month. No one ever said this in the meeting yesterday, but it seems clear to me that the goal is to have an announcement at the Aqua conference, which is the first week of May. So it's very aggressive, but we'll see. So that's the main that's probably the main focus of the Aqua board at this point in time, because of the length of time that we've not had a full permanent executive director, and the emphasis is on getting that completed and done with. One other thing I wanted to mention for the future is a week from today, at between 2 and 4 p.m., there will be a Region 9 board meeting that will be held in person and virtually. The in-person location is Eastern Municipal Water District in Paris. So I believe, I'm not sure, but I hope that all of the board members have received that email from Aqua at this point, inviting them to that meeting. And I have also passed that information along to our general manager to let staff know as well, that there may be, in case there's interest in participating either in person or remotely. And that's all I have to report at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice President McKenna?
I don't have any compensable meetings, but I did listen in on Zoom to Mission Springs Water District. Just want to say congratulations to Amber Duff, who's now the president of that board, and Robert Griffith, who's the vice president. So I think, interestingly, we have female presidents at both the local boards. That's it for me.
The only thing I have is the executive committee meeting last week. So that is it. And so now we can move on to item number 11, director's comments and requests. Director Bowman.
Yeah, just a comment. Coming up on Thursday, the 29th, the City of Desert Hot Springs is having a spa tour. When I had my hotel spa, we participated as one that you could go and look at. And now I've been asked to be on the VIP bus as a docent and take people around to the various spas. It is fantastic. If you have an opportunity, this is Thursday, the 29th. You can go to the City of Desert Hot Springs website and learn more about it there.
All right, thank you. Director Gracia?
I had left something off. The Colorado River Board of California met in,
Oh, yeah.
I went. It was very informative, and I encourage all the directors to take an opportunity to go. Instead of they meet monthly. Their meetings last year and the year before would be all up and down the state, but now they're swapping between Ontario. This whole year, it looks like Ontario and Palm Desert. So it's easy to do. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. You'll learn a lot. I was honored to be introduced to the whole room by Director Nelson from Coachella Valley Water District, who serves on that board. And the amount of information that you get is far beyond what you would get at any of the other meetings we attend, and even the conference we went to for 3 days. I think that was more impactful to be there for 2 hours than to be in Las Vegas for 3 days, quite frankly. But anyway, I just wanted to push that idea that these meetings are for you, public, and I think that as we move forward with these issues on the river, that this is going to become more and more important to this agency and other smaller agencies that rely on river water, but are represented by perhaps Metropolitan and other agencies. But I got a lot out of it, and I know you guys would too. So there you have it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Secretary Treasurer Ortega?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to go back to some conversation that we had earlier today regarding the sites project. I don't feel that any board member doesn't understand the gravity of their responsibility towards being involved in a project like that. I do feel that there are in the program enough opportunities for this board to fulfill that responsibility as we get closer to the time where we will be making that final decision on what our involvement might look like. Thank you.
Vice President McKenna?
I have none, thank you.
And I have none. So at this time, we will adjourn into closed session for a conference with legal counsel on existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1. And also conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. And if we could meet in the conference room at, what time is it? 9:45. Thank you. Okay, we are back in open session, and we do have something to report from closed session. We're actually going to make a motion and take a vote here in open session. And I would like to make a motion to extend the lease to Hoffman Steel Fabrication by up to 6 months with a CPI increase based on the November 2025 CPI. This will allow the completion of the appraisal, review by the board, and potential negotiations with the potential leasee or purchaser.
Second.
A roll call vote, please. Or any discussion or comments or?
Who moved?
Okay, I moved.
Oh, you moved? Yeah.
I'm sorry, and that's for, can you
first
clarify
by-
section 12C, item 12C, correct?
Yes.
And then who was the second? I didn't hear that.
Second was Gracia,
Thank you.
Director Gracia.
Okay. Director Bowman?
Aye.
Director Gracia?
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer Ortega?
Aye.
Vice President McKenna?
Aye.
And President Bloomer?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, I would like to adjourn this meeting of January 20th, 2026, and we'll see you in a few weeks.